and thank you for joining me as I go over the Waxing Gibbous phase of the lunar cycle. So, the Waxing Gibbous marks the end of the waxing portion of the lunar cycle right before we hit the full moon. So, you can look towards the east, and anywhere between sundown to midnight, you will see the Waxing Gibbous rising. And as the days progress and the later that it begins to rise, we'll have more opportunities to see it during the day, which is really nice. So, gibbous is Latin for hump, and it's meant to describe that portion of time when the moon is a little bit more beyond its first quarter half illuminated phase, but not quite completely full. So that's like that portion, which is why it has the name Waxing Gibbous. And during this phase, so we've had a yang phase with the first quarter, which moves us into a yin phase. And I remember when I first read about the Waxing Gibbous being a yin phase, it felt a bit counterproductive. Now, I was actually born under a Waxing Gibbous, and I find that the energy makes me feel a bit like I have to constantly be over prepared because we're going into the full moon, and the full moon is fully illuminated. There's a lot going on with that phase. So it seemed to me a little bit counterproductive. And that's when I'm like, I'm tapped into my young energy because, again, not everything is about being productive. And again, you need phases where productivity and the act of initiating and doing are not the purpose. So when I was reading into how the Waxing Gibbous phase was about cultivating trust within ourselves, I understood how a yin phase could be extremely supportive for that. So the full moon marks the halfway mark in the lunar cycle, of like where we're going in terms of our intentions. And the in-betweens of life and the halfways of life can be an extremely uncomfortable place to be in and exist in, because like the excitement of like beginning a new journey has kind of dissipated, and the realities of the fact that we're not quite near the finish or like halfway there can feel very discouraging. And trust, I'm realizing, is learning to expand our capacity for discomfort, especially sitting in those unknown places, and just building resiliency around what it means to be open to discomfort. So I'm going to throw a practice at you guys already. A practice that I felt has been very supportive in that process for me has been cold showering. So you might have heard it. It's the Hoffman technique. Probably not necessarily the way that they do it, but just kind of like my own version of it. I started off with, so first I shower, clean myself. Once I'm all done that, I'll turn the water all the way cold. And I worked my way up because if y'all knew me, I cannot stand the cold. I'm not a cold person. Even in the summer, I sleep with blankets on. I just love warmth. So I started with 30-second increments and timed it and worked my way up to about 5 minutes. And I've been doing it for about 2 years now. And let me tell you that like there is literally never been a moment, and I don't know if that'll change in the future, where I've been like, yes, I 100% want to do this. I feel comfortable doing this. It's so uncomfortable every single time. But I feel like that's the purpose of it. It's really helped and supported me in learning how to breathe through my discomfort, because cold water like that helps activate the sympathetic nervous system, which triggers the fight and flight response in a safe way, in a controlled way where I know I'm not unsafe. So I'm able to regulate my emotions. I'm really able to regulate my breath and find a place of centeredness. And I found that this actually translates in my day-to-day life, where I find myself in situations that trigger my anxiety or trigger my fear, even though I am safe, and I'm able to really like breathe through it and regulate. So that's like a practice I really encourage you to try out. I read somewhere that you only need 2 minutes to get the full benefits of it, because there's just so many benefits to it as well in terms of your immune system, everything. So I don't know if that's actually true or not. So I've just been doing 2 minutes, but I definitely will start increasing it again to hit my goal of like an ice bath. Anyways, back to the Waxing Gibbous phase. This is the phase where we begin to plant the seeds of trust that will grow within ourselves. And I want to be very clear that with that, there is a deep responsibility. So I'm not saying to ignore the world that we exist in or to completely let go of any personal responsibility that you have. It's more of a practice of beginning to know yourself through the practice of trusting yourself and understanding how you can situate yourself, within the world so that you can better align yourself with the intentions and manifestations that you're looking to bring into your life. So an uncomfortable truth is the fact that uncomfortability is not so much an if, but a when. It is undeniable that we will be confronted with situations that are uncomfortable as we progress through life. And there will be moments that will literally bring us to our knees and make us question everything. And trust and the development of trust is about looking at those situations and not running away and not trying to change or disrupt the reality of what is existing within you. And that's when the practice of discernment that we began developing in the first quarter phase becomes extremely important, because discernment allows us to really know where we can place trust in terms of like places, peoples, and situations. And the development of discernment will allow our intuition to guide us to finding the right action in each moment. I'm just going to get a drink of water. Now, I feel like this phase can be a difficult phase to understand because there's no defined objective with this phase. It's rather sitting in the unknown and allowing everything that you feel to surface and to trust what you're feeling. And this is where we begin to really embody the practice of being. That is a yin characteristic. So yin energy becomes very supportive in our practice of being. So in the last video that I filmed in the first quarter, I went over the aspects of yang that are effective and ineffective. And Ezzy also went through the characteristics of yin that are effective and ineffective that I found to be a great baseline to know what type of yin energy I'm embodying. So I will create a text box so that you can pause it and you can go through the different types so you can write it down and see yourself. So I'll just read them off for you right now. So in terms of being, the ineffective is controls rather than allows uncertainty. In terms of restoring, it's being or sitting in helplessness and being overwhelmed versus nurturing yourself and others. In terms of listening, it's being too timid to speak versus hearing and collaborating, which I absolutely love, by the way, because I find that when we believe like we need to listen, we often think of it as like ceasing talking, but it's like entering a space where you're truly listening to what the other person says without adding your own filter to it and without thinking about what you want to say next. And then instead truly listening to what a person's saying so that you can speak in an informed way and in a way that honors what the other person is saying. So I thought that was really nice. And then, the last one is receiving. So ineffective is reciprocates versus the effective, which is accepts with boundaries, which is another really important differentiation. So for this particular phase, the act of being becomes emphasized. And being like refers to being with uncertainty. And I want to make a note that this is a very difficult ask for someone that has experienced trauma. And trauma oftentimes makes it very difficult to allow us to go with the flow in terms of the energy of uncertainty, because controlling things allows us to feel safe at times, especially when you've gone through trauma. And I find a practice that has really supported me in the process of being with uncertainty is differentiating my intuition with my anxiety and fear-based knowings. So for me at least, and again, this practice and this feeling will look different, so I really encourage you to explore what it means for you. But I just want to give an example so that you have an idea of what I'm talking about. For me, my intuition, when I'm in a state where I can feel my intuition flowing and providing me with information, I feel a sense of calm. And it's not necessarily void of emotion. However, it doesn't really fluctuate, and it's almost like just a knowing and an understanding. Now, compared to my fear-based knowings, it's usually, if not always, triggered by a state of me not taking care of myself or not nourishing the needs that I have, which creates a state of mind that's already stressed. And then with that comes a roller coaster of emotions when it comes to having to figure something out, and this triggers overthinking. And then overthinking inevitably triggers cognitive distortions. And my personal go-to cognitive distortions are jumping to conclusions, all or nothing thinking, and overgeneralizations. And I recognize that these ways of thinking and these distortions are my ego's way of protecting me. And while I honor and I'm so appreciative of the fact that my ego works so hard to protect me, I realize that these ways of thinking and being are actually more detrimental to my health than they are helpful. So, and a really important practice as I do this is also not only understanding why it is that I go to these places, but it's also recognizing the ways in which I prioritize my own comfort versus my capacity to feel discomfort. And as I'm doing this, I'm lovingly holding myself accountable so that I don't remain stuck in patterns that don't serve me. And something that's really important, I found, is accepting that uncertainty is uncomfortable. There's really no way of sitting with uncertainty in a way that's comfortable. It's just like an oxymoron, essentially. And I'm realizing the more that I embrace reality and the more that we can all embrace reality, it really allows us to stand in our power. And again, doing this with no judgment and just honoring everything that comes up as we begin to shift these states of mind. So in the book, Lunar Abundance, Ezzy quoted the author Viktor Frankl, and she quoted his book, Man's Search for Meaning. And there was a quote that really stood out, so I really want to share it with you. So it's between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose a response. In our response lies our freedom and our growth. And just to be clear, this is assuming that one has the internal and external resources to bring about that change. And this is where radical honesty becomes extremely important, of really seeing what resources we do have available for us and understanding how to begin to enact action with those resources to really promote our transformation. So the Waxing Gibbous provides an opportunity for us to observe our approaches, our processes, and how we can be and truly embody yin. And again, these practices differ widely between you and I. It differentiates greatly between our yin and our yang phases. And I just want to emphasize one more time, this does not mean pretending. It does not mean that we disconnect from the real world. It's just more of a reflection of where we lean into pushing ourselves beyond our capacity and where we begin to feel guilt for taking care of ourselves. So, through the development of understanding our shadow patterns around achievement and what motivates us, we can invite ourselves to not continue to push ourselves when we're overwhelmed physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, and how to treat ourselves with kindness when we begin to feel guilt around taking care of ourselves and when we begin to feel feelings of unworthiness as we begin to practice that. So, the essence of trust and cultivating trust within ourselves becomes knowing what is good for us and what is not good for us. And it being a practice, it means that we have to practice this several times. It does not feel comfortable. Even as I've been sharing this information of the various phases with you, it still feels uncomfortable for me, and it's still something that I'm going to need to practice over and over and over again. And luckily there's many lunar cycles that we can work with to help sharpen our skills and to really learn how to embody these practices so that we can treat ourselves with the love, kindness, and care that we deserve. So if you leave with anything from this video and what I've said, it's the fact that resting and restoring ourselves is not just something that we do here and there. It's actually a necessity. And I am so bad for that. So I'll see my whole schedule for work, write that down, then I'll implant all the stuff that I need to do around work. And I will literally be like, oh, I have this day. This day is when I'm going to rest. And that's not sustainable. It's learning to be honest about how you can incorporate little bouts of rest every single day, even in your busy schedule, where you can take moments to really fill your cup so that you're not reaching empty by the time you're resting. And to be honest, when you reach that day that you scheduled for yourself to rest, you're not even fully rested because you don't even get to really fill your cup. It's almost easier to fill it a little bit each and every day. So Ezzy Spencer provided some exercises of how you can develop the skill of embodying the yin practice of being and to build trust in a low risk environment. So I'll put another box so you can write it down. So some examples are finding a yin role model. So finding someone that truly embodies the practice of yin in a way that resonates with you, and just seeing what behaviors and what habits they have that you can begin to model and incorporate into your own life. For those that work out, and honestly, movement should be a part of our day as much as possible, calling myself out on that. Opting to go for a slower workout versus a high intensity workout. So this is an example of how yin means not ceasing to do actions, but rather adjusting your actions in a way that doesn't push you beyond your capacity. Staying in versus going out. So this is where the development of our boundaries and staying firm with them becomes very helpful. Being honest about what can be left for another day. And that goes for work, at home, with others. And again, learning to embody healthy boundaries supports us in that practice. And then whatever else feels nourishing for you. So for me, I'm the stereotypical basic, I love baths, connecting with nature becomes extremely important for me. Playing video games can be a way to relax. True crime, whatever floats your boat and makes you feel relaxed. Incorporate that more into your days so that you're really embodying that practice of just being. So this practice and this phase allows us to connect deeper within ourselves. And it's through this practice that we're able to almost attract the right people, situations, and opportunities to support us in manifesting our intentions into the 3D world. And it's very important that this is a practice that you experience rather than think about. Manifestation requires our action, whether it's a yin or yang phase. These actions will bring it closer to us, and we're reaching the halfway mark, so it's important that we start developing that energy. Thinking about it alone, manifesting through thinking it in your mind or repeating affirmations and mantras are not it. It's part of a practice that allows us to sustain the act of doing, but we have to experience it in order to help us really and truly reach our goals and our dreams and our intentions. So yeah, that is the practice of the Waxing Gibbous. If you've made it all the way here, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. There's definitely a lot to sit with and let sink in with this video. Please share with me what's resonated with you in the comments down below. I would love to hear from you and what's been working for you so far, what has not, and ways that we can adjust and what we can incorporate more of. So thank you so much. I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you next time as I get into the full moon phase. As I said, you can expect a Waxing Gibbous reading this upcoming Saturday, and if you're watching this many lunar cycles from now, be on the lookout for a more recent Waxing Gibbous collective reading phase. Thank you so much. Take care.